My name is Barry Chester. I lead up our airline practice. I have the privilege of partnering closely and spending many hours, mornings, days, nights with Andrea Halverson. Andrea, you came from Amazon. You joined Alaska about 6 months or so ago. Could you mind just maybe introducing yourself and
Yeah.
sharing a little bit around your background?
Hey everyone, Andrea Halverson. Thanks, Barry. Happy to be here. I joined Alaska about 7 months ago to help lead some innovation and transformation for our guest care organization. So, anyone a loyal Alaska Airline, Hawaiian Airline flyer? Yes, we're in San Diego. I love to see this. And really think about how do we continue to build great guest experience while balancing the need for productivity and improve guest experience for whenever a guest comes to us. Prior to this, I worked in seller support for Amazon. Anybody a seller on Amazon? Yeah, a couple crossovers. But really looking at how do we eliminate the need for a guest to come to us for support and really pushing the belief that the best guest experience is one where they don't have to contact us in the first place. And so how do I build organizational structures, processes in place to get that buy-in from the top, but also implement it at the team level?
So in the CX space, we talk a lot about automation, right? Automate everything. I think one of the things that many companies have been realizing as they've been going through their journey is that automation alone is not enough. And a lot of times companies are looking at these problems like, hey, we're seeing this defect or we're seeing this experience, we're seeing this friction come into our org. How do you think about that at Alaska, and what were some of the things that you brought over from Amazon, and what are some of the things that you're bringing over, and what are some of the things you're not bringing over with you?
Yeah, we heard a lot about it earlier this morning is like culture is key to how do you transform this in your business. And so really doing the work as leaders to rally folks that guest experience starts with a seamless end-to-end experience is really that they have limited friction, that we all work towards orienting to solving those problems versus accepting defects that can happen throughout the system. And so what really came through from Amazon and even transitioning to Alaska is how do we build partnerships with people within the organization that can actually fix the stuff we're talking about. Data doesn't go anywhere if people aren't using it to actually fix things, react to things, take a look at their products, tools, or digital experiences and make updates to them. But a lot of the data is coming out of downstream experiences, so contact centers or voice of customer data or surveys or GSAT. And so how do you actually build relationships with the people upstream in the system and then use the data to tell the stories for what they're building and why it matters? But again, partnership is incredibly key to this. So if you don't have their buy-in that they should actually care about this data, it won't go anywhere. You're going to run reports, you're going to bang your head against a wall, you're not actually going to do anything with it. And so if you haven't really take that time to invest, who can fix each item that you're really talking about? Whether that's an entire topic, whether that's one specific guest issue, have you reached out? Have you built the relationship with them and really given the what's in it for them as part of your pitch to fix the guest experience? And so that really applied at Amazon and it really applies at Alaska. Alaska is a little bit different because we already have that awesome culture of we're all in it for the guest. How do we make sure that our end-to-end experience is great? So the activation is a little bit different, but I still have had to rely on the relationships in partnership with the data that I have.
Yeah. So over a decade at Amazon, storytelling with the data, analytics, and the story that comes with that. Customers are telling you something is broken, but how do you really validate this as being true and at scale?
Well, scalability is hard because again, I think that, people are like, well, I heard something from a guest or a customer, and I don't know if it's true or not. But the reality is you can do both. So how do you build programs or people that are looking programmatically at what are those big rocks? And we heard about this a little bit earlier today. What are those big issues that we know plague our guest experience? And then how do I, as an executive, actually listen to the contacts? How do I listen to the guest journey? I do that personally through actually listening to calls. I know it's not radical, but with the data that we have available, it is our obligation as executives to be in the contacts, to be in the calls, because it's faster than ever to do this. You don't need to ask somebody for help. You don't need to like wait several days to get this information. You can literally sit at your desk and just open it, look at transcripts, look at calls. If you're not doing it, ask your partner who runs your contact center to give that data to you. And then that allows me to figure out what is the experience they have when they're asking for this help? What is the experience they're giving us? And what is the sentiment they have? Because if we just look at flat data without building that experience or sentiment, again, it's just who is talking loudest in the room versus who is bringing that compelling story of why this matters to the guest. And then I'm a really big fan of what are those big boulders that we need to fix, and then what are the paper cuts that our guests are telling us about. And so if I'm looking at social media or if I'm looking at our contact data and I see something that like, it should be quick to fix, right? I'm not a software engineer, I understand that. But we all kind of know what's configuration, what's code, what's easy, what's hard. I use my best judgment to say, let's fix this, because the more that I actually spend a half hour of my day identifying those issues and sending them to another team, not only am I influencing them that we care about this, I care about this, I saw this, I don't like this. That thing, every time they're deploying code next time or they're fixing the digital experience, they'll say, am I gonna get an email from Andrea? Am I gonna get a follow-up about it? And that matters because they know that I'll have a high bar later, whether from my team or from myself personally, to come back to them and ask them to change it. So I feel like that part isn't as scalable, but it becomes fun for us because we get to hunt for these things. We get to look for them. And then the satisfaction of seeing it get fixed for the guest is another win we can talk about. It's another compelling story we can use in those larger meetings about strategic initiatives we need to push.
So I think we have probably a pretty diverse set of individuals that are working on customer experience.
Yeah.
When you joined, and I think you said boulders, I think Sean, you called them rocks earlier.
Sorry.
And so just thinking about also maybe just connecting the thread from the previous session around PPT or PPP, whichever one we want to go with. What was sort of your approach and how you actually got started when you joined at Alaska 6 months ago?
So has anyone seen the movie Field of Dreams? Okay, one of the main taglines is, if you build it, they will come, right? And I like to use analogies with my team. Some of them love it. Some of them are like, okay, Andrea, what are you talking about? But that one is really important to me because you have to do the pre-work. You have to have the conversations as you're building the data sets, as you're building the repeatable mechanisms to inspect and review things. Because again, if you just go into a session and you're like, we got to fix all these issues, here they are, people are looking at dozens of metrics every day, right? And like, there's no what's in it for them. And so really, I, again, figured out the infrastructure I needed for my data. We have a partnership, we have AI that's giving us a lot of this insight, but I really thought about what are the labels I want to use. If I put it in my term, but not the product director's term, will they be able to quickly see that that's something they own, right? And so it's as simple as like, how do you get the data to appear in ways that they know that they're the owners for it? Does that make sense? Like even the fine tune of like, do I call it check-in or check-in or voluntary change versus guest-initiated change? Like those things matter because that gives them the reality that you care about how they think about the product as well, and then they can seamlessly integrate it. And then there's building out what are the goals and plans, and we hear about this a lot in CX is you have to build shared goals. And so that often does start at the top, but it doesn't have to be scary or punitive. It really should be based on celebration. So, hey, we're going to take a goal to make a process more efficient, or we're going to take a goal to reduce customer pain points with check-in, for example. And we all want that to get better. And so instead of having a negative cast on it, have a positive cast. Contacts and data from customers is typically trending negative if that's who's responding to your surveys. And so how do you put that positive spin on it of, wouldn't we be even more effective if we did this together? How do we make this a better guest experience and then really celebrate the wins? And so if your team partners well with another team and fixes something for the guest, your leadership team, you need to celebrate that. You need to compliment them, you need to thank them, figure out what makes sense for them, because that will get repeatable action, that will get people to buy in. They're gonna wanna participate in your projects, they're gonna wanna take action because they know they'll get that recognition as well.
So in the midst of all the change, right? The organization that you came into, obviously your role as a leader and others here, how has that changed in this new environment where speed and time to market or time to decision matters, and your ability to act quickly? How does that impact your role and how you think about structuring your team in order to accelerate the initiatives and the transformation that you're driving?
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel this way, but it's just faster. And I love that. And if we don't change, nothing changes for our guests, right? Like the technology is changing, our AI is changing. But if we personally don't change, then we won't be successful in this next phase of customer experience. And so, what that looks like for me is, again, 3 or 4 years ago, running operations, I would have a team of hundreds of program managers. We would say, hey, did the guests or the sellers contact us about X, Y, or Z? Has anybody had this experience? And then it takes 3 or 4 days to get the answer. So we have to pull the data, we have to do the analysis, we have to use teams to kind of look through it. Even with LLMs, like even with some sophisticated systems and technology to guess at what this was, today we don't have to do that. It takes minutes. And so where I change is if there's something that I'm curious about, I'll just do it. I'll just like create a quick dashboard. Yeah, maybe that's not the most scalable thing, but if it takes me a couple of minutes, it's faster for me to do that to even send the email requesting somebody on my team to do it. And so how do I get them on these big boulders, these big rocks that really need durable push and durable leadership? But then if we're making a quick business change and I want to check our guest sentiment, I, as an executive, need to know how to use these tools to do that, because it's not, you don't need tons of training. It's not rocket science. Like you really can do it. And so like writing AI prompts or writing quick, we just updated our baggage fee. Within minutes, I had created a dashboard to watch what were guests saying about it. And that's really empowering, because then when I go in and talk to other executives or talk to our senior leaders about it, I feel really close to the guest experience. I'm not hoping I heard it correctly from a team member, if that makes sense. And then I can get the deep dives from with my team, or the what are the plans we want to do to fix something, really built with my general infrastructure.
Yeah. How many people in the room have used Chat GPT? Okay, almost everybody. How many people are leveraging AI to develop insights in their own, in their corporate life at work? About half. This is the barrier that Cresta and Alaska have overcome together in our partnership, and one that I personally am super excited about as we continue to move forward. And I think as companies are looking to continue to press the envelope, I think even in the previous session, thinking about predictive analytics, right? Really understanding and augmenting the traditional way of doing things with surveys, right? And we all know that, I know some companies will say, hey, do you want to take a survey? And that's the first thing at the beginning of the call. I haven't even told you what my problem is yet, right? We talked a little bit around bias and around some of the, of how you actually determine who you send the survey to. Being able to leverage AI to understand and to develop insights across all the interactions that come across your business is a huge opportunity. How do you think about that data and how you've been able to leverage that within your own business?
I think we're still figuring that out. I would say that looking just at Net Promoter, you're leaving behind a lot of rich data about what the guest didn't tell you. And so I think that's where we're really looking right now at predictive satisfaction, while maintaining that we may still want that survey. People feel the power of like, I told you that I didn't like something. So psychologically, I'm not quite sure yet if like hitting that button to say I'm giving you a 1 or I'm giving you a 5 is really necessary. But the reality is that we do have all of this beautiful, rich customer data when they were working with us to solve an issue. And so how do we start thinking about, is there something we can pull from that to extrapolate our perception if they were satisfied or not, and testing it, and does that work? And then I start thinking about like, Well, for if anybody running a contact center or working with our guests directly, we have data in that conversation that might be helpful. So I might not be having a contact about the check-in experience, but if the guest told us, I really didn't like the blanket on my last flight, or I love the new Filson blanket that you just deployed to the guest experience, how do I get that data over to that team? Because again, it may not be driving contact volume, but it is sentiment analysis that we have about the guest in these guest experiences. And so really opening up my perception that as a contact center leader, as a care leader, it's not just about my outcomes, it's about what are these conversations I already have access to, and how do I let the organization use those to further their goals of improving guest experience.
Yeah. So maybe circling back to defect elimination and maybe some practical things that the folks here can kind of take back with them. I doubt that most teams here have a defect elimination org. If they wanted to start next quarter, what would you actually tell them to do?
I would say, regardless if you have AI integrated systems or standard data integration systems, really do the work to say, what are the key topics and categories that are durable, and how do we make sure that we have clear measurement that is communicated on this? And so it may not be a whole team that can do this, but if you're leading it or if you're looking at it, and then literally map each of those to an owner. And maybe that owner doesn't know it yet. Like maybe they're like not your best friend yet. And really say, how do I build the relationship or work on this relationship to start taking action on that on behalf of the guest? And then figure out where those holes are, and then figure out what the goals would look like. Because you may not be able to take a 30% improvement goal for each of the experiences, but maybe you have 5% for this one and 100% for this one because this is fully automatable, but really being dynamic in how you approach it. But getting that base infrastructure of how do you tell the story every week, every quarter, every month in a simple way will start getting people to come look at what you're doing and start talking more about it.
So what I'm hearing is map the journeys, pick one, pick a broken one, high friction, high value, use real conversations, not just surveys, and ownership.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be high friction. It could just be something that needs a fine tune or is a quick win. Like don't underestimate the importance of every change that's positive for the customer as a win. And so figure out which are those ones that, again, maybe not your biggest rocks or boulders, but that are things that you know will get guests to react in a positive way, and try them.
Yeah. So, we talked a lot around, self-service and improvement, removing friction, and improving the guest experience. Where's Alaska going next? I know that you're working on something new called AI Assistant. What's that?
Yeah, we are experimenting right now with how do we best serve our guests with additional support for informational questions. And so right now, obviously, we're known for our great guest care. Our amazing agents do such a great job of showing up for our guests. But I also have the desire for how do we make sure that that time is most utilized for our toughest conversations, the one that Heather talked about earlier, the IROPS, the things that are really disrupting our guest. And so with informational questions or things that I think, again, could be handled with more of a QA format, we're really shifting how do we build SOPs, how do we use agentic services for that. And that's been a really fun experiment because we in contact center are developing product. We're thinking about that. And that leads us to have better conversations about, well, what if I just had data about, is this guest eligible for check-in or not? Or can they do that thing that they asked us about? And so again, we get better partnerships outside of our experience because we're pushing on the edges of that a little bit. And so that's part of what's coming. But again, at the heart of all of this is how do we continue to use the best judgment in every contact that we get, whether that's solving contacts holistically, pushing with our strategic partners, or that one experience where we've also invested in our agents having the tools to do that better.
Great. Well, Andrea, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Barry.
And your leadership. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.